Jurassic World Dominion is set to introduce audiences to a new dinosaur known as the Giganotosaurus. This gigantic Cretaceous animal happened to be a pretty big deal back in the 90s when the Jurassic Park series was at the peak of its initial run, with many people calling it not only bigger than T-Rex, but also far scarier, with even Jack Horner helping to fuel those flames by calling the Tyrannosaur a scavenger at the time. Now, with this new dinosaur introduction comes a lot of conversation in the series, and one of those conversations happens to be on how it almost made an appearance way back in 1997 during the promotion of Jurassic Park's first sequel, The Lost World. Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about why the Giganotosaurus was cut from the Lost World Jurassic Park's iconic video game way back in the day, and how that animal differs from what we will eventually get to see in Jurassic World Dominion. So back in the 90s, the sequel to Jurassic Park was shaping up to be a pretty massive summer event. And with that release came Steven Spielberg's collaborating with several video game companies for tie-ins to the new franchise. The groundbreaking yet commercial and critical failure that was Trespasser happened to be one of those games, but the other was actually the game that I'm sure a lot of you had on PlayStation back in the day. This project opted to give fans a look at what Isla Sorna might look like behind the scenes of the Lost World, and had you take control of characters and events that played out separate from the narrative of the film. Now, while everyone was developing the Lost World, several different dinosaur designs and environments were discussed to be included in this game, and one of those scrapped ideas happens to be the Giganotosaurus. Keep in mind, this wasn't necessarily just some average run-of-the-mill video game that got churned out every few years. The Lost World Jurassic Park was a game that worked very early on in development of the new movie it was coming out with, and in fact, Michael Giacchino, the future composer of all three of the Jurassic World films, actually composed this game's score before John Williams even began work on the music for the movie. So this is something that was being developed extremely early on during the film's production. Now, one of the reasons that I think a lot of people enjoy the design of 1997's unused Giga is the fact that it looks very different to that of the T-Rexes in both design and color. Instead of a brown or green skin tone, Miles Teaves, the man that designed the dinosaur, opted to use more blues and reds in the animal's design. And the overall shape of its skull and posture are pretty different from T-Rex as well. One of the Lost World's key members of visual development, Matt Hall, said the team accomplished this by working with paleontologist Don Lessem and sketching out the dinosaur's anatomy from the animal's skeletons, which is probably why the Giga looks pretty spot on for a 1990s version of the animal as far as accuracy goes. But of course, with all projects, some things have to get cut in order to meet a deadline, and this dinosaur was not only no exception, it wasn't alone. Another Jurassic World Dominion creature, Dimetrodon, was actually conceptualized for introduction in the Lost World video game as well, but also got axed in the end. Producer Patrick Gilmore spoke about getting rid of some of the game's ideas by saying, "The hardest part of making the game was incorporating 5 playable characters, but a close second in the decision department was any choice which had to do with cutting something, which was always painful." In the end though, there may have been one other reason for the Giga's deletion that I think makes a lot of sense, and that happens to do with the dinosaur's overall size and stature when compared to other characters in the game. According to the development team, the most difficult part of the actual animation process came from working on the T-Rex, which proved to be exceedingly difficult in getting the dinosaur to move not only properly, but believably to the person playing the game. Turning a massive dinosaur like the T-Rex on a dime and making sure it was able to dodge raptor attacks, enemy gunfire, and even jump was not easy for the programmers of the game, and they spoke about that a lot in the official strategy guide. So you can imagine just how difficult the Giga would prove to be had they gone about including it alongside the T-Rex in the final product. With that being said, in the final release of the game, you can find the Giganotosaurus in the Velociraptor art gallery section, which I guess means it could have been some sort of enemy for the raptor levels at an early point in development. Eventually, Allosaurus would get a lot of that love instead, but it only appeared in the Tyrannosaur portion of the Lost World. So a lot of stuff got shifted around in the 16 months of the game's development. Now, if we compare this guy to what Universal is delivering to us with Jurassic World Dominion, I'm sure many of you can cite a lot of differences in how both of the animals look. The latter of which is going for a much more Titan-esque design that has a vastly different look to T-Rex than what even the 1997 Giga had. Now personally, I really am a fan of this concept art from the Lost World, but after seeing the Dominion prologue, I am also really interested in seeing how they utilize that dinosaur for the rest of the movie, because the new version of the animal looks pretty gnarly and all around mean in comparison to its much more basic 90s counterpart. You know, for these new movies, they're trying to go out of their way to make sure that all of their big bad dinos that they introduce don't look identical to the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which has to be in every entry no matter what. So it makes sense for them to tweak the Giga's design. I just personally think they went a little overboard and made it a bit more monstrous than what it could have been. Still, I do wonder what this animal would be like had it gotten the chance to show up in that 1997 video game, and whether or not fans would look forward to seeing the filmmakers use that design in a future movie, especially since Colin Trevorrow seems to have utilized some of the design choices from the game's Dimorphodon for his 2015 film. But hey, those are all just my own thoughts on the subject matter. The Giga looks pretty badass in the Dominion prologue, but we're gonna have to wait and see how it actually performs in the film. As far as this old concept art goes, what do you think of the dinosaur design from the 1990s? And how do you think it could ever be implemented in future titles down the line? Now, whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Now, before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Guys, it really means the world to me that you all continue to support what I do, and I never want you to ever forget that. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video and hope that you all enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.